Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani. Welcome to Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. He's Mark Ostrander. He's Grant Turner. I'm David Mirikitani. Good to see you, boys. How are you?
Good.
Doing well, brother.
So, Grant, I'm happy to hear you're finally getting out and to see different parts of the world. And, you're kind of a homebody. You don't get out much, but you're headed to Colorado. It's actually at a high school, but in Colorado Springs, correct? For the for the World Team Trials, which we're going to get into. So let's start out with really, really good news. Pennsylvania becomes the 39th state in the union to sanction girls high school wrestling. And I don't think there's zero controversy about this, but really good news. Pennsylvania is, by a lot of metrics, the best high school boys wrestling state in the country. If you do it based on the number of high school kids there that turn into college All-Americans and the number of colleges that have Division I programs. If it's not the number one state, it's clearly a top 5 state forever. And we've all talked about the aspects, the values of wrestling and how it affects both boys and girls. So GT, as part of a college program, and obviously have a good relationship with the women's program at Grandview. How do you guys see, what's going on there in Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm very excited to see, the state of Pennsylvania jump on board, and we've been having more and more state associations or state federations or state governing bodies sanction high school women's wrestling. And I think no more important than having where our hotbeds of wrestling are, get on board with that process. And Pennsylvania is very much a wrestling state, has done very well promoting. They have a ton of programs. There's tons of families that are invested into it, and to have basically just that sanction for the girls is a huge thing. And then now basically have the growth opportunity within that state to continue to, I'm really excited about the growth and potential of women's wrestling in Pennsylvania.
All right, I'm going to interrupt. I agree. You popped up for a second. What's the Nike? I didn't think you were not wearing a Nike shirt, and then you stood up. Heavy flex.
Flow reps. There's a picture of a turtle sitting on a weightlifting bar.
That's beautiful. Right. Mark, you and I talked about this stuff for a while when we were doing this by ourselves. How in Iowa, girls wrestling in Iowa has just exploded. So what do you think about them adding it in PA? And I guess conceptually, maybe it could have an impact on college programs out there as well, right?
Yeah, I would hope so. Still think Division I Power 5 schools are kind of falling behind a little bit, not starting women's wrestling after Iowa kicked it off, 2 years ago. And I thought at this time we'd probably have 6 or 7 or maybe 10 other schools that would pick it up. They've kind of slowly watched to see what's going on. I think once we get more high schools, sanctions, union states, however you want to use it, David, involved in this, I think then the colleges are going to have to get more involved. But I got one question. Grant, maybe you can answer this for me. We've always been a sport that's kind of been on the cutting edge of maybe being dropped. Olympics, quite a few years ago, probably 8 years ago, they were talking about getting rid of it, and we had to do a big push to save it. Do you think by the high schools sanctioning women's wrestling, it's going to also help the men's side of it, keeping the sport around for the next 100 years?
Yeah, I think the long and the short of it is that women's wrestling was one of the main reasons that wrestling was able to stay within the Olympic movement with its basically diversity or basically inclusion of both men's and women's athletics as a sport. You're going to continue to have to basically fight to keep into the Olympics for almost every sport, as there's new things that are popping up all the time. It's never just guaranteed. You can even see like boxing and weightlifting currently are having some issues with their federational or government at the international level. So I think with right now the UWW's guidance, and the promotion of women's wrestling and everything that's going on with their marketing and promotion and, E60 videos and all that kind of stuff of women's wrestling. Women's wrestling is going to be on the forefront of pushing the envelope to keep men's and women's wrestlings very much in the Olympic movement. And I think as a wrestling community, I think everybody would agree that we want to stay within the Olympics. We don't want to go off and do our own thing. Yeah. I mean, the world championships are amazing, but our goal is, as wrestlers, is always Olympic titles, right? So that's our Super Bowl type thing. But I think with the addition of women's wrestling and sanctioning women's wrestling, especially like how women have stuck to freestyle, you could probably see maybe some of the international athletes coming to the U.S. and training even more. Very similar, like how, I don't know, maybe like football or soccer in Europe, a lot of the maybe other players from all over the world would either go to Brazil or Europe to be able to play. So I think just continuing to promote women's athletics is the right thing to do if you are in favor of also just making sure that the men's aspect continues to stay around.
Yeah, for sure. And when we talked to some people a while back, they mentioned that there might be a push to get beach wrestling in like the 2028 Olympics, which is obviously male and female counterparts or equivalents, however you want to say it. As you were talking, GT, one of the thoughts that crossed my mind was, in general, there's obviously rules where kids get burned out, where they start kids too early, that they don't stress fundamentals and fun early. But just in general, if you start earlier in any sport, you generally get, like if you start at 9, you're probably better at 18 than you are if you start at 14. And if there's no high school program, it's very difficult to be good at something. And so there's a lot of females, girls, that'll have an opportunity to be good at wrestling at a younger age, earn scholarships, all that stuff in Pennsylvania. And as we've all said, it's a wrestling state. You guys live in Iowa, it's a wrestling state. And so when girls didn't have that opportunity, they grow up in families where their brothers are wrestling, their dads were wrestlers. And now, down the line from now, there's going to be moms that were wrestlers, which is really freaking cool and is going to drive that process. So speaking of female wrestlers, we didn't get a time to really address this. And GT, I think you're the guy that should talk about this the most. Mensah-Stock officially retired. I mean, we touched on it, but you've worked with her. I've met her. I just wanted to give you a minute just to talk about her impact as an Olympic gold medalist, as an ambassador for the sport, and as an African-American, really just a pioneer in a lot of ways, and just a genuinely, I don't know if decent is kind enough word, but just a genuinely good human being. So I wanted to give you a minute just so we could address that.
Well, I think, her announcement coming out that she's going to be basically going into the WWE letter reform system or going to be a part of their talent and whatnot. I think everybody is a humongous fan of Tamira. And, she is in her own right, all of her accomplishments, she is a groundbreaking, first ever to do it, African-American female Olympic gold medalist in the sport of wrestling. If we had our own Cooperstown, she would definitely be in it. So she's a part of, the history and the fabric of wrestling globally. Not just in the US, but everybody that's had the ability to be close enough to her kind of feels all of that energy and vibe, and like her personality comes through very well. So I think we could do an entire docu-series on her and all of the things that she has done throughout her career and where she came from and all of that kind of stuff. And once again, if Flo wanted to do it, absolutely, I'll take a royalty rate. I'm giving you guys ideas.
USA Wrestling wants to do it.
Right, whatever you guys want to do. I can be a part of it. Just put me in the producer line or whatever it is, make me a part of it. But I think that there's a lot of great storytelling that happens in wrestling, and I think Tamira is an amazing story that could be told, just as her rise to, stardom, her medals, her accomplishments, and just the person that she is. So, I know the people of USA Wrestling and the wrestling community is sad to see her move on to another opportunity, but I think everybody's rooting for her.
Yeah, and I think even though we're all sad, I mean, first of all, she was the one that kind of made this thing famous at the Olympics. All the ladies started doing that. But second of all, it's really good for people on the outside to see you can use wrestling as a springboard to a long-term career. And, in the WWE, I mean, you obviously work with Gable Steveson, see his post being a Nike athlete, but that this is another path besides MMA and besides coaching and besides club coaching, that this is another path that wrestling can create careers and lucrative careers and careers with big platforms. So I think, that's a very cool sidebar of it. So very, very interesting. Really no portal talk this week, no coaching talk this week, kind of the two big individual college stories. And Mark, this would affect the rankings. It will affect the rankings when, you and I were doing them. Hidley goes from 84 to 97 and takes his 6th year. And Austin Gomez says he's not going to take his 6th year. He's going to focus on freestyle. I think he's going to represent Mexico, try to make world and Olympic teams and win world and Olympic medals. So you were the guy that always made sure my college rankings, or our college rankings, were on point. Let's start with, first of all, Gomez, I think, was one of yours, mine, and GT's favorite wrestlers for letting it rip. What are your thoughts on him not coming back and going on to freestyle now?
I just think he's doing what he wants to do. So, kudos to him. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him in the college level. He'll be just as fun to watch in freestyle because he's not going to change the way he does things. You're going to see big throws from him. Wisconsin gave him a shot with all the concussion problems he had in the day. So kudos to Wisconsin for giving him a chance. And then, it's just a shame he got hurt, this year, late in the year, because he was one of the guys we were talking about. He's the only one that beat Yanni. So, we thought he had a shot. And the way he was wrestling after the All-Star meet, you would have to agree he was going to be a front runner to win a national title.
He beat Sasso, too. So to be fair, he beat both finalists. Yeah. Yep.
So, that was kind of a pick that we had back then, the way he was wrestling. And then, obviously he hurt his knee and was kind of hobbling around there at the end of the year, trying to do the best he could. But, he'll be missed. I really thoroughly enjoyed watching him wrestle. So
let's get your take on Hidley. So I was looking to kind of give you the math because you're not looking at it. The returners in order at 184 were Brooks, Keckheisen, then Hidley, 1st, 2nd, 4th. So Munoz, Gavin Kane, all those guys will slide up a spot. So I'm going to just say names, Mark, and you tell me where you would stop with Hidley. I won't include Ferrari because he's not on a team. So Tanner Sloan, Stephen Buchanan, Rocky Elam. I guess maybe I should Brooks will be at 197. It sounds like, and Truax would be at 84. So probably Brooks will be up here and Truax will be over here. So let me start with, so we go Brooks, then Sloan, then Buchanan, then Elam, and then Jacob Cardenas. Do you slot him in behind Elam and above Cardenas, since Cardenas was 8th and Hidley's multiple-time All-American and 4th last year, or do you put him ahead of the round of 12 guys?
Oh, I definitely put him ahead of the round of 12 guys, just because he's placed every year at the national.
Right, but do you put him ahead of Cardenas as well?
I do.
Okay.
I think he's proven himself more than Cardenas has. So, talent's talent, obviously. I guess I'm just really confused, and I know maybe he cuts a lot of weight. I'm not sure, but this to me sounds a lot like the Quincy Monday scenario. He could probably make 84 and has a shot at winning a national title, yet he wants to go 97 and face Brooks again. and that hasn't worked out so well for him. So, you know,
I think a lot of these guys are going up, and GT, this kind of falls into where you are. I think a lot of these guys move up based on Olympic weights. Like I actually had a 45-minute conversation with Kenny Monday yesterday morning and talked about that with Quincy. Like, you know, if you're going to be a 74 kilo guy, you know, cutting, which is 162.8 for people that don't want to do the conversions, you know, 165 and making that comfortable, he's probably better for that growth into that weight class. Like, I think that's the reason why Aaron Brooks is going 197 next year. He's going to try to make the Olympic team at 189.2, you know, as opposed to cutting to 84. I mean, it's a tall enough task to try to beat David Taylor and the rest of these guys without being light going into that. So I'm guessing, Mark, that's the thought process. They have a successful RTC at NC State. Pat Popolizio is doing all the right things. GT, you think that might have something to do with that process?
I mean, it's got to factor in a little bit to it. I mean, especially if Heidley wants to continue to wrestle internationally, that benefits him to be up a little bit. But, you know, once again, I think college weight classes, he might feel, you know, he's been at 84, maybe the weight cut for his 6th year.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Yes.
I mean, like, kids grow, man. Like, you know, and once again, I don't think he's maybe grown a whole bunch, maybe since, I don't know, the 8th grade, but like, guy's been rocked up forever. But
his nickname's Hoagie too. So, I mean, you know, like he can have a few more of those now, right?
Right. And I mean, I think the thing for him too is maybe like, yeah, international could be a little bit of a factor. It could be he wants another shot at Brooks. You know, maybe he's, you know, maybe for the NC State team, they'll be better if he goes up to 97.
Yeah.
And once again, I don't know the recruits. I don't know who they're going to get or all these other things or whatever, but very well could be a very good move for him. And, you know, I wish him all of the luck in the world going up to 197. And then, of course, like internationally, like, yeah, he's definitely an 86 kilo guy.
Right.
So,
yeah. I think what's interesting is, as you said this about the lineup, and that's one of the reasons why I love doing this pod, because like we all map out subjects, but we don't really talk about them. So it's more organic, you know, really organic as we're talking about it. What happens with Trumbull, right? Like he's a 97 guy and he's tall. I don't know that he can make 84. Does he bump to heavyweight? He's got the frame for heavyweight. Does he redshirt this year? I don't know if he's got a redshirt or not. You know, maybe because he's done well enough internationally, somehow he is an Olympic redshirt. I mean, like there's all these things. Certainly Pat and company will figure that out. But, you know, it's an interesting sort of, you know, we've talked about this for years. The dominoes always start, you know, one thing begets movements in a lot of other places. So, all right. So next, so we talked about this a little bit off the air. I know Flo's done something about this. I know Rockfin's done something about this, about college gambling. And don't want to spend a lot of time on this, you know, because, you know, we don't know specifically what's going on, but it is in the state of Iowa where the smoke is coming from. So we don't know how much fire is there. But basically, there are rules in place that say that college athletes are not allowed to gamble on sports, their own sport or any other sports. I mean, there's all sorts of thoughts on this. It goes all the way back to like the Pete Rose days where he's no longer he's never been in the Hall of Fame because of this. And, you know, the number one rule when you walk into the clubhouse or the dugout is you can't bet on baseball. So whether you agree with the rule or not, you know, the rules, we've all been coaches. We've all been athletes. We've all set rules that maybe we realized probably had some wiggle room, and we've all followed some rules that we weren't happy about following, but it is what it is. I think part of this has to do with optics, you know, like, hey, we just don't want our guys or girls gambling on stuff. And then part of it is like real corruption, like point shaving and things like that. Like, hey, I know the point guard at XYZ school, and that's the person that gets fouled late in the game, and they could dump a couple free throws to help me make my bet. I think the part, and I don't even, you know, certainly you guys have whatever opinion you want on. I'm not sure I have one, but I think the part that's sort of sticker shocky is the amount of money you have to gamble and what it correlates to. But basically, like if it's $500 or $600, you lose the whole season. one of the things we were talking about ahead of time, and I'm pretty sure on this, and again, this is the opinion of me and you guys when you speak and not USA Wrestling, but I believe it's ever. Like, I believe, like, if you gambled $20 30 times while you were a college athlete, you've hit that $600 number. It's also, our understanding is it doesn't have a lot to do with whether you've won or lost money. I watched the 6-minute flow video and I listened to Willie talk about it. I do think it's really interesting what'll happen, because if people are out half the year or even a couple meets, that's going to have a tremendous impact on the Iowa State duel. GT, I'm right. That duels are usually in December, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's first 5 or 6 dates has to be. So I don't know if you guys, either one of you guys want to add anything to this or just thoughts, or what do you guys want to do about this?
Well, I think it's real what's happening, obviously. I do know that the University of Iowa's baseball team, which is pretty good, they have a shot at making the World Series this year. They're on the top echelon of the Big Ten, has held out at least 3 of their players for the last 3 weeks, have not played. Kids are not injured. So people are just basically saying that they're holding them out just in case these kids are not able to compete once the ruling comes down. And they're trying to be cautious. They don't want to break any rules. They don't want their program to be, hurt any more than it already is going to be hurt by this situation. I've also heard that they've went through a lot of this stuff and most of it's being thrown out. It really doesn't have anything to do with anything. So I don't know where it's going to end up, David, but I do know that, when I listened to Dresser speak, he was interviewed by Flo or somebody. He was pretty upset about the whole situation, when are we going to let student athletes just be students, because any other student could, bet on a game and be part of a square pick for the Super Bowl. That's, you're just betting on a square what the points are going to be. You put $50 in. Well, now you could lose, a 30-year season for doing that. And you don't know anybody in professional football. You don't have ties to it to make money so he's saying, when are we going to let these kids just, be like everybody else? They go through enough as it is. So I think Kevin's worried about what's going to happen, or I don't think he would be as upset as he is. So I think there's something there. I just don't know exactly what it is. Like, we had talked about, we don't have all the information, obviously. And so I guess we'll see what happens. But I do think there's a point in life, David, where, you shouldn't be treating athletes, shouldn't have harder rules than everybody else. I think it should just be across the board. And should you be able to bet on your own sport? No, I agree with that 100%, because you do have something to say about that. But as far as I know, wrestling's never been a sport we do a lot of gambling on anyway. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, the Super Bowl square specific example is really a good one. And listen, like, I grew up in a pretty strict household and was definitely taught what was right from wrong, but it is goofy that, like, I could give my roommate, I guess roommate's a bad example once you're a college athlete, but I could give one of my buddies $50 to bet on a game. And as long as the bet came through him and I trust him to pay me if I win or lose, I can give them $1,000, as long as gambling's legal. Plus, we all know there's a ton of illegal gambling going on. I mean, there's just poker games going on, where people are not claiming taxes. So GT is somebody who's never spent more than 3 minutes in a casino your entire life. You're actually, I was trying to explain to my parents Sunday, by the way, happy belated Mother's Day to all the moms out there, that you actually have to walk through the casino to get to the US Open. So by being in the casino at 10 in the morning, that doesn't make you a degenerate. So, but any thoughts on this before we move on to World Team Trial picks?
Well, I think Mark brings up a couple of good points. And I think one of the things I think that Dresser said about, hey, college kids just be college kids. I'm like, okay, yeah, they're college kids, but they're not. They're college athletes. You're Division I athletes. You're held to a higher standard for, your academics to be able to be an athlete. You have to sign all of your conference stuff, code of conduct things. You're not just a normal college athlete. And once again, I don't think I'm necessarily disagreeing with Kevin in his stance that like, hey, just let these kids be college kids. Yeah, I mean, they're also young adults. I mean, let them kind of figure things out and put up some guardrails and things like that. But I think I wouldn't try to marginalize the college Division I student, because now they're able to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. You want the responsibility of being an adult and making that money and getting all of that NIL situation to be in your favor, then you must have, and once again, I don't think kids could be in trouble or whatever, but I don't necessarily have a huge problem with them like gambling on like the NFL or NBA or, using DraftKings, FanDuel, or whatever.
DraftKings account. Yeah.
Whatever it is, right? Now, if they're betting on their own teams or they're betting on college, like you can't bet on college athletics in anything or, whatever it may be. But I mean, you already know kind of where you can and can't have wiggle room, I think, Mark. Like, I think you know that, hey man, just don't do it. Or if you're going to do it, like don't have, paper trail or something like that. Like,
don't get caught. If you're going to do it, don't get caught.
I think we joke about it, but I think there is a something to be maybe reassessed on the gambling side of things for collegiate athletics based off of now there's so much more money investing into the personalized athlete themselves. But I think to say, oh, let the college kids be college kids, I think is a very cheap way to say like, hey, these kids just need to be kids. It's like, well, they're really not.
Your point's really well taken. I mean, they are contracted with the school. They get scholarships. They have way more higher profiles than, like, to use a different athlete in a different sport who's probably done nothing wrong, like Caitlin Clark, taking that team to the national finals and all the publicity that got. It's a lot different than if somebody who's a pre-med major is doing, is just as good of a human being. It just isn't as good as throwing a ball in a hoop. So the profile is a lot different. And it's that, with the great responsibility, quote, or that, you're responsible as you get more power. So I think the thing that probably all of us are a little uneasy about is the hypocrisy of the NCAA. Like, they can make millions and millions of dollars off these kids, and they're literally providing them no value, but they're telling them what to do. It's like a parent that doesn't actually put a roof over your head or put, food on the plate. Like, we're just going to take the stuff from you, but we're not actually doing anything. And I think we go in a whole nother conversation where, like essentially football bowl games have just broken away from the NCAA. And if the basketball tournament ever does that, like, the NCAA goes out of business. So
and I agree with you 100%, David. There's another side of this I don't think we're really looking at either, is that these coaches are under such pressure to perform, have their teams perform. And when something like this happens, David, and you lose 30% of your starting lineup and you've got 5 duels against good teams and you've got to put in backup kids, it makes our life so much harder to do their jobs. And they spend so much time recruiting and trying to build a program and do things the right way. Because I can guarantee you, Kevin Dresser tries to do things the right way. He really does. I've known him for years and years. He's a good human being. All he wants is what's best for the kids. And then when you get some kids that are doing things and they know they're not supposed to be doing it, but they do it anyway, it really affects somebody's, livelihood of what they do for a living. And I have one other question. Grant, does NAIA have regulations on gambling? Do you guys have to talk to the kids just like Division I? Because I don't remember junior college having any stipulations on kids couldn't, bet on a football game or something. I never saw anything about it.
That's a great question, Mark. And I I don't know enough about it. That's just one of the aspects of the coaching stuff at Grandview that I don't get into, is like kind of the clearinghouse, and like kind of the government. I mean, I'm sure that the NAI has a policy on it, as a governing body. I'm sure that there's some sort of stance or something, but it's not. I don't think that even like maybe even the smaller conferences, like kind of like whatever it is, the Iowa Rivers or conference or whatever it may be, has that formalized opinion on these things. I'm sure that there's something there, but maybe not as strenuous as the Division I paperwork or Big 10, Big 12 paperwork.
I think the other thing for us all to remember is this is just all trickle down from football and basketball, right? Like nobody cares if, and I'm not going to name a wrestler. I'll name Grant Turner when he was at Iowa State. If Grant Turner bet $100 on a football game, like no one cares. But it's the appearance of we care. It's the appearance of, well, like I mentioned Caitlin Clark, and I'm sure she's done absolutely nothing wrong. But if she had done something like, well, if we're going to punish Caitlin Clark, then we have to go punish Grant Turner. So, and again, that to me goes bigger to the hypocrisy of the whole NCAA. There's 250 fat cat vice presidents doing nothing and just making money off the backs of athletes. So you can tell that's something I actually really care about and bothers me. But anyway, so this is in the news. I think the hope from everybody here on this show is it doesn't affect the season, and that most of these kids are just honestly just having a little college fun, and it's not like they're running gambling rings out of their dorm room or apartment or something like that. So I don't think anybody's trying to build the next DraftKings. So, hopefully it doesn't have a negative impact on the season. Okay. So much happier subject. If you're a member of USA Wrestling, you got an email. Olympic trials tickets are on sale. That will sell out. GT and I were there in 21, which were technically the 2020 trials. Probably one of the weirder experiences, GT, where literally they had, seats zip tied so you couldn't sit that close to each other, but it will sell out in Penn State and College Park, so people should get tickets now. I know Penn State and USA Wrestling, they have to pay a fee to have that, so if people don't want to complain about the ticket prices, that's fine. It'll probably be streamed on Peacock again, I'm guessing. Boys, say cross your fingers. I'd love to be on the mic again like I was last time. Was really one of the highlights of my post-coaching wrestling career. And the energy in that room when you see people achieve the first step of their dream of becoming an Olympic team member, or at least the U.S. representative based on if we qualified the weight or not, is hugely significant. And all these people have tons of people that have invested in them over the years. And so hopefully they get a good push, buy these tickets early. GT and I were talking about hotels. Get your hotel as quick as you can if there's any still available. Get your flights worked out, because that's a puddle jumper flight. It's like Fargo. There's no really direct flight in there from a lot of spots. So, go on USA Wrestling's website or talk to somebody who's got that email. So back to USA Wrestling stuff. The World Team Trials are this weekend. I don't know who owes who wings at this point, but probably time to just wipe the slate clean and start on wing bets again for the year. So Greco, all the weights, freestyle 4, women's freestyle 4, men's freestyle 3. So I am going to pull this up, and then we have like 20 minutes. I think we'll just pretty much try to go through and see what we can do here on picks. So if you're watching, so again, talking to Bill Zadek and those guys, the best way to explain it is whoever won the U.S. Open is in Final X. The other person is either a past world team member or world medalist from the 2022 Worlds, or the winner of this tournament. That's the the most concise way to say it. So in Greco, no medalists, so everyone is in this pool. So if we start with, at 55 kilos, 5 people entered: Dalton Duffield, Camden Russell, Billy Sullivan, Jacob Cochran, Terso Lara. We're recording this on the 18th. You have till the 19th to enter. The tournament's on the 20th. Greco's on Saturday. Both the freestyle tournaments are on Sunday. This from Colorado Springs, where GT will be. I'm going to make picks here, and if anybody disagrees, jump in. Otherwise, for the sake of brevity, I think Dalton Duffield's a favorite here. Anybody disagree with that? All right. 60, Ildar, Boonfinger, Black, Kuntz, Garul, Miranda, Mumi. Some big names here, some guys that have won things, but it feels like Ildar Havisov, having been an Olympic team member and everything else, is a pretty heavy favorite here. Do we agree?
Yep.
Sammy Jones, Dylan Gregerson, Xavier Johnson, Haywood, Nerschel. I think, again, Sammy Jones, pretty big favorite here. So unless we keep it moving. Now, this is an interesting weight. So GT, Filkey and Sancho, to me, are kind of tier A or tier 1. Joel Adams is the high school kid who's committed to Michigan. Let me just start with these. Do you think it's Filkey, Sancho in the finals? And then if so, who do you got?
Yeah, I think Filkey and Sancho in the finals. But I think out of all of these Greco weights, I mean, you're going to see like the opening round matches, like in Greco, like weird stuff can happen pretty quickly. And, big 4, big lift, 4, match over, terminated.
Yeah.
So I just think that at this Olympic weight, I think Filkey, Sancho, basically put the gas on a little bit and make sure that they're in the finals for this one. But
who's your pick there?
Sancho.
Okay. Marco?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Sancho too.
Okay. 72, Pat Smith. I feel like huge favorite with only 4 people entered. 77 is an interesting weight with how do I pronounce his name, GT? Because he's like the 41-year-old out of Poway.
Yep.
Okay. Alexander Kikanuau or something like that. Jacobson, Paddock. But I mean, at 4 and 5, Jesse Porter, Rayvon Perkins, that's a really interesting, I guess, quarterfinal or pigtail bout. And then the winner draws into the 1 seed. This is a weight where if the 1 seed didn't make the finals, we wouldn't be shocked, right? Right, Grant?
I mean, all of the Olympic weight classes are always more heavily contested, I think, especially like globally and in the US.
Right.
So being at 67, 77, 87, 97, that's where everyone is kind of pushing towards, especially like heading into Paris.
Right.
Also, just to go back at 72 kilos, I'm going to give my boy a shout out. Jack Irving from
I was going to
Grandview.
ask you, is Viking Wrestling Club Grandview? I'm guessing it is.
It is. So I'm picking my boy Jack at 72. Just got to give him some props as I should.
Heart, not head, but go with it. Yes. Right.
So, as far as this is a very, very very, very powerful weight for the U.S. and has been for a long time. This is, Bezik's weight, Kamal Bey. We've had a lot of, guys do pretty well at this weight. And then I believe the story was at the U.S. Open that Alexander was just granted U.S. citizenship.
Right.
Like this spring.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. Kamal kind of messed him up there in the finals, but you could see in the mini tournament, Alexander was very good. Very, very, very talented Greco athlete. So
Jesse Porter was in that match where I called it at the Olympic trials where he thought he was losing and was winning, and then all the craziness that ensued there. So 82, your guy Provisor's the 1 seed. pretty deep weight when Kendrick Sanders is the 5. I mean, I feel like Provisor's the favorite here, but Kendrick, if he could beat Brackett, and Provisor would be an interesting match here. So just, let's just kind of do this to keep people like matches to watch. That'd be interesting. 87 Stefanowicz is the returning Olympian. And it looks like he switched to the Navy, which is interesting. When I was did some play-by-play with him, he was with the Marines. Zach Bronigold, Tim Young, Lara Carlson. At 97, Boykin, Delaney, Marshall, Lout. Interesting to see Lout over on the Greco side. And then 130, Kuhn, Farmer, Longendijk, Metz, Aiello. I feel like Kuhn's a pretty heavy favorite there to come out and then re-wrestle Schultz at Final X. So let's stop sharing. We'll go to the women's. Let me pull this up. So here's the women's weights. All right, 4 weights here being contested. So this is off the mat.com. This is Gary Abbott's write-up, which is really, really good, breaks everything down. So 55, the winner's going to get Alicia Hauk. The seeds here, Winchester, Mason, Luza, Martinez, Gallegos, Skidmore, Ford. Chikara, big favorite here, right, Grant?
Yeah. Lauren's wrestled very well as of late. She was in the finals at the Open. Villascusa is coming back. And Amanda Martinez has wrestled pretty solid throughout the entire year. But yeah, I would say Jakara, based off of this lineup, would be a heavy favorite at 55.
55 is the in-between weight, right? Of the Olympic weights, it's 53 and 57 are the Olympic weights?
That is correct.
Okay. 59 kilos, Michaela Beck is sitting at Final X. The seeds here, Maya Nelson, Jen Page, Brenda Renya, Abby Nettie, and on down the line. Hedrick, Basham are names a lot of people have seen before, Savannah Cosme. So this is interesting to me. Jen Page comes down from 62. Some of that stuff when people are moving up and down, it's difficult to seed them. Is Jen Page a big – I feel like she's a very realistic threat to win the weight, Grant. Am I crazy in that? Or I feel like she matches up pretty well against her.
Yeah, I would say so. The biggest thing for me, I think, at this weight class is, it being a non-Olympic weight, they're hoping to maybe get a medal at the World Championship. So I could see how Jen would want to go to 59. So, and Abby Nettie has made a world team before.
Right.
Hedrick has been in the Final X multiple times at 57.
So, Paige on the bottom side of the bracket feels like she's got a fairly manageable draw. So, but that should be a great finals match if it ends up with the 1-2 seed like that. So 68, 4-time U.S. Open champ Forrest Molinari, who looked great in Vegas, is sitting. Alexandria Glaudet, Katarina Lang, Emma Bruntel moving up, Solon Piercy, on down the line here. Is Glaudet the pretty substantial favorite here to make it, GT?
Emma is extremely, extremely talented.
Yeah.
To see her up at 68, I think that's a big jump for her, like kilo wise.
Yeah.
We've seen her all the way down at 62. She's been at 65. 62 is a big cut for her. 65 is kind of been where she's at as of late. But yeah, great to see that. That would be a very interesting final between Glaudet and Bruntel if that were to happen. But Lang is very tough as well, and Piercy is also shown that she can beat some very high level girls within the U.S.
Yeah, and I checked with Gary just so people know this is not 2 out of 3. The finals here are 1 match because the 2 out of 3 is a Final X. So 76, Kennedy Blades put on a show. She's sitting in Final X, probably the deepest weight of this tournament and women's side, especially Gray, Yelena, Diamond Guilford, Kylie Welker, top 4, and then Precious Bell, Skylar Grody are big names at the 6 and 8 seed. So, I mean, GT, honestly, there's an argument to be made for any of the top 4 girls or women to win this weight, right?
I mean, this is an extremely deep weight for the U.S., all the way going into the U.S. Open. Yeah, this is a meat grinder of a tournament, and for the next year is going to be insane to see how this all shakes out. We have a lot of talent at this weight, and if we get to it, we're still going to have a meet at either 68 or 76, determining where she wants to go for the Olympic weight classes, because she's at a non-Olympic weight class at 72 kilos currently.
Yeah. So tons to watch here. You can get singles session tickets, USA Wrestling, or if you're unable to go, you can watch it live on Flow, like we said, on Saturday. So let's get into men's freestyle. So all right, 3 weights here. 61, 92, 125. The first 2 weights are non-Olympic weights. Vito won the U.S. Open. They have the placements here. It was Vito, Santo, Nashon, Tomasello, Colon, Gross, Aiden Valencia, Daniel DeShazer. The top 7 get through, plus Dayton Fix. As we thought, DeSanto is the 1 seed, Seth Gross is the 2, Dayton is the 3, Nashon's the 4, Tomasello is the 5, Colon is the 6, Valencia is the 7. So if no one else enters, DeSanto gets a bye, has the winner of Nashon, Tomasello, which has gone both different ways. They both won one of those. Joe Colon, Dayton Fix would be on the bottom side of the bracket, and Seth Gross, Aiden Valencia. So Mark, DeSanto, multiple-time All-American, Seth Gross, national champion, NCAA champion, Dayton Fix, NCAA champion, Nashon Garrett, NCAA champion, Nathan Tomasello, NCAA champion, Joe Colon, NCAA All-American, and JCA, national champion, world medalist, Aiden Valencia, the next big thing coming out of high school. Unbelievable weight. Give me your breakdown on this weight.
I think I don't know about you, but I'm going to say DeSanto will be in the finals, and I'm going to say it's probably going to be against Seth Gross. I think Dayton, I've got to see something out of him because he did not look good at D1s, and then he hasn't wrestled since. 2 years ago, I'd have put Dayton Fix to win this weight, but right now I'm going to have to say DeSanto and Gross, and I think it's going to be a crazy final. So, and DeSanto only has to beat one really, really good guy. I know, Garrett and Tomasello are good, but Fix and Gross, they're gonna beat each other up in the semis. Obviously, they're gonna go after each other. So, I think he's got the best path to win it, DeSanto.
So this is probably nerd alert, but Garrett was up 8-0 on DeSanto. And DeSanto ran him down 14-13. And as we know in freestyle, 8-0 is one takedown or a crotch throw or something away from winning the match. So, obviously he'd only have to wrestle one good guy if there's 7 guys in the bracket. That's not an insult to anyone. It's simply he'd get a bye. So, and I assume you're picking, since your blood is black and gold, I assume you're picking DeSanto to win the weight, Mark?
Well, actually, I think probably Gross will win the weight. I think Gross is just a technician when it comes to going back and looking at film and changing things up. So
good at adjusting.
That's what he did against Dayton. So I just think he has too much experience. I think he'll find a way to win.
All right, GT, same question. Kind of give us your predictions for the bracket.
I'm going to take Dayton Fix, Austin DeSanto final. Dayton Fix wins. I think to Mark's point, I think Dayton and Gross is going to be an amazing match. I think it's going to be great, unless either Dayton gets his trap arm or like Gross gets a leg lace or something crazy. I think that's going to be probably one of the best matches of the tournament. Is that if it does come to that, I do think also Joe Cologne Dayton fix.
Yes.
Also points could be like 32-30 between those two guys. Joe's a problem in freestyle. Like he's just that good at freestyle. And I think also probably the match probably second, if it goes the way that it did at the Open, is Nashawn Garrett, Austin DeSanto. So
Yeah.
I think DeSanto is, I think he's learning a lot more about freestyle. I think he's always had a very good style for it, but he's had a lot of success as of late. So I'll give AD the nod in that matchup, but Nashawn has a very, very good freestyle talent as well. A lot of fireworks at this weight for only 7 guys.
Yeah. Well, Cologne fix, I think one of the things to specifically look for is how much Joe Cologne likes double underhooks and how much Dayton fix likes inside step out of an overhook. But that move's hard to hit when you're on your toes. If you can get your hips back, it's perfect for him. And Joe's significantly taller than Dayton. So, that's a very nerdy specific thing to watch. Garrett, to me, seems like if I was going to pick a 4 seed in any of these brackets to make the finals, his path is not insurmountable. He's beaten Tomasello and he was up 8-0 on DeSanto. Now, if you're coaching, you go, well, if you're pro Garrett, you go, all you need was 2 more. If you're DeSanto, you go, look, you're going to win the second period. Just don't give away the first period and you're going to be fine. But, we talked about this in freestyle all the time. You get a takedown, you get a lace, and it's over. Like, that's what Nashon did to Tomasello, like, super quickly. So this is a fireworks weight, and you kind of got to be ready to watch first thing in the morning because there's not a lot of lead in here. 92, Mike Machiavello won the U.S. Open, so he's sitting. Colin Moore is the 1 seed. Nate Jackson's the 2. Zahid Valencia moving up from 86 is the 3. Schultz, Aiello, McIntosh, Sloan, Sam Mitchell. So the one thing that I think is a big factor in this is Colin Moore's elbow looked super jacked in the wrong way at the U.S. Open finals. I think that's had a lot to do with him losing to Machiavello. And then the other thing is Zahid Valencia moving up. He's looked really good at 86, won some big matches, got run down by Brooks in the second period. But none of these guys kind of wrestle the same pace that Brooks does. And by the way, no, never mind. So, if seeds hold, it's Schultz, Colin Moore in the semis, and Jackson Valencia. So I think I'll pick Zahid to win this weight. I think he can beat Nate, and I don't think Colin Moore is 100%. I think 100% Colin Moore is too big for Zahid, but I don't think he's 100%. So, GT, you went second here last time, so go first here.
Yeah, I think I'll take Nate Jackson versus Zahid in the finals, and I'll have Nate Jackson being the guy that wins the mini tournament.
They're going to be on the same side of the bracket.
Oh, apologize.
That's okay.
I was reading it wrong. My bad.
That's okay.
So Nate Jackson, Zahid, I think Nate Jackson gets him in the semifinals.
Yep.
And I think Colin Moore wins on the top side. But Colin Moore can score in a whole bunch of different ways. I just hope that he's healthy enough in order to represent himself a little bit more offensively with that elbow. But I think even with him being a little bit hurt, I still think he makes finals. But I think whoever comes out of the bottom is going to be the one that ends up going on into Final X.
All right. Marco.
Yeah, I got to go with Nate Jackson winning this weight. I just think Colin Moore's too banged up. I think he's going to give it a shot, but just don't see it probably happening. And I think Zahid's just biting off a little more than he can chew when he's going up to 97. I just think
92.
for 92, I just don't think he's big enough for the weight, to be honest with you. And I understand why he's doing it. He wants to make a world team. So, but I'd have to go with my picks.
Well, the other thing is that's the path, right? Like if he can make him and Machiavello would be a fascinating match to watch because Machiavello is big for that weight, and obviously Zahid would be small. But I think Zahid is a more skilled wrestler, frankly. And, but it's the Cobra and the Mongoose there. But I mean, we can get to that when we get to that, depending on what happens this weekend. So 125, Gabe Stevenson, U.S. Open champion, had a pretty good tournament, I would say. Seeds here: Gwiz, Paris, Hendrickson, Dom, Walls, Demetrius, Thomas, and Cassiope. First name Tony. So, Mark, go ahead. You got Cassiope winning the whole thing, right?
I really wanted to, but watching what Paris has done to him over the last 2-3 years, it just hurts. So I'm gonna take Paris to win it all. I just think he's probably the second best kid at this weight. So I'll go with Paris.
You got Paris beating Gwiz.
Yes.
Okay. GT.
Woo. All right. So I'm going to have Gwizdowski winning the mini tournament. I think Gwiz is he's just a savvy vet. I'll just take him to do it. I think Mason Paris wins on the bottom side of the bracket. Once again, to Mark's chagrin, I think Cassiope is a very, very talented freestyler, but I think that he'll get beat by Paris. The matchup that I kind of want to see is Demetrius Thomas versus Wyatt Hendrickson. Just as a fan of both those guys, kind of want to see that play out. But I think then Hendrickson Paris, I think, will be a good match. But I think Paris will get him.
I think Wyatt Hendrickson's a low-key guy to watch for in the next Olympic cycle. I mean, like, he's done a great job at Air Force. Those coaches have done a great job. I'm sure he has access to USA Wrestling there, being in Colorado Springs, but doesn't have a ton of full-time guys to train with. If he got in the right RTC for the next cycle, he's a super dangerous dude. And the one thing you don't have to worry about him is he's all gas, no brakes. He doesn't lay back. So anyway, let me see if there's anything else. So next week we will talk about the World Team Trial results, and we will probably hit on the college rules and our reactions to that. One last thing, because next week, I don't know if we'll get to it, and then the week after that, it'll be over. May is AAPI month, Asian American Pacific Islander month. And I just want to say, as the person that falls in that category and one of the few people in the media, wrestling media, that falls in that category, I'm very blessed to have this opportunity. Thanks to Justin Tritz way back when at Track Wrestling for getting me started, and for Mark, all your help along the years with the rankings gave us a lot of credibility. GT, for all the credibility you bring to this podcast and the Missouri Border Brawl and the backing of APS and of Nike, and everybody who's ever been a guest on either of these shows, have been guest host, any of that stuff. And there's literally over 200 people, so I'm not going to name all of them, but just want to thank everybody, and off the air, all three of us just tease the hell out of each other and crush each other. But the jokes are all out of love and have nothing to do with race, and everybody just gets treated the same way. So I just want to thank USA Wrestling, and thank Gary and Rich for bringing me over and bringing this podcast over, and just thank everybody. And probably the best way to sign off. Thank everybody for watching and listening, and we will see you guys all next week.